According to the National Center for Drug Abuse, over 165 million Americans ages 12 and up are currently abusing drugs or alcohol. Of those 165 million Americans, there is a mom, dad, sister, brother, wife, husband, son, daughter, or grandparent praying and pleading that they would stop. Addiction is a subject most people don't like to talk about and is kept behind closed doors. But the Finding Hope podcast will bring light to the subject and give families that are living in shame, guilt, hopelessness, fear, worry, and anger tools and education to find strength, peace, happiness, joy, and hope. Hello, I'm Amy LaRue, Finding Hope Coordinator for Hope is Alive Ministries and your host for this Finding Hope podcast. At Hope is Alive, our mission is to radically change the lives of drug addicts, alcoholics, and those who love them. We do this through our intentional next-level sober living homes and faith-based support groups for the loved ones of addicts called Finding Hope. Thank you for joining us today. Before we begin, I want to ask you if God is calling you to start your own Finding Hope meeting in your community. I know many listeners across the United States and beyond do not have a meeting in their community. So today, I want to challenge you to pray about if God is calling you to start your very own Finding Hope. You don't have to know all the answers, just need to have a passion to see hope and healing be restored to others who also love someone in the midst of addiction. I will be there to help you each step of the way. You just need to send me an email at amy@hopeisalive.net or log on to FindingHope.Today and sign up to learn more. But today I have one of my amazing Finding Hope leaders joining me all the way from North Carolina. Welcome, Maggie.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Can't believe the holidays are in front of us.
I know. And we were just talking I'm in Oklahoma City right now and you're in North Carolina. It's cold and yucky here. And you said, what was the weather like out there today?
A little warm, a little humid. Doesn't feel like November.
Yeah. So, but tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Amy. And like she said, my name is Maggie. I live on the coast in North Carolina, so I live at the beach. I am married to my husband of 12 years, and we have a 7-year-old little girl who's in second grade.
Okay. The beach. I love the beach. I'm so jealous. I got to go out there about a month and a half ago, and it was just so beautiful out there, and it's just gorgeous. So I'm jealous of you being right there on the beach. So,
It is a
so
good.
obviously you're part of Finding Hope. You're one of our leaders out in North Carolina. Our first meeting we ever had in North Carolina, Morehead City. So tell us a little bit how addiction has impacted your life and what brought you to Finding Hope.
Yeah. So addiction has been part of my story for about 13 years. That is when I met my husband, who is the one in recovery. But so I had no idea what real addiction was until I started dating him. And it wasn't until, I don't know, later in our dating, early engagement, that I realized there was a problem. He came from a long line of alcoholics, so he was well aware. But we got married kind of young, and we were partying and, living the good life. And so everybody was drinking. We were partying. And so it was kind of hard to tell that there was a problem, but it definitely revealed itself. I could just tell that his drinking was different than everybody else's. And in hindsight, I think I stuck around because, number one, I didn't truly understand the disease that had taken him over. And two, I just kept thinking, okay, well, if we get married, it'll fix the problem. And then 4 years later, well, if we have a baby, it'll fix the problem.
Well, that's real interesting. Oh, I'm going to stop you right there because I hear that a lot. Okay, we were in college. We, went to parties. We did all of that. I really thought it was just a phase. Okay, once we got married, things would get better, right? Well,
Right.
that didn't. Well, maybe once we have kids, they'll stop drinking and per se like grow up in a sense.
Yeah.
But you're saying that didn't happen. So
And
so what did you do in that instance? You had your sweet daughter and then how are you feeling through all of this?
very alone. As I became more aware of number one, what alcoholism was, it and I couldn't just say, "Hey, why don't you just not drink?" or "Why don't you do beer instead of liquor?" When I realized those things weren't working, I realized I needed some help, but I had no idea what that looked like. Like my family was too good for addiction. In my mind, addiction was a certain type of people, not, this handsome guy who came from a, you know, well-known Christian, solid family, graduated in 4 years from a good college. That just wasn't us. And so cue denial, right? And so I started kind of mentioning it to some friends. We had a solid church family, solid friends, but I didn't want to say too much because I didn't want anybody to think we were weird and not want to hang out with us. Um, and as time goes on, it doesn't matter what pastor, what friend, what anybody says, none of it was fixing the problem. None of it was fixing him. So
So
enter
did
hopelessness and yeah.
So did you go to, like, your pastors and have them talk to your husband? Is that kind of the approach you were trying to get other people to maybe show him what was going on? He, wasn't hearing it from you, wasn't listening to you, so you like, "I'm gonna take a different approach now," you
Right,
know?
right.
Okay.
Let's bring some others in, which, you know, ends up making him feel shame and like it's a moral failing, which I know now is that's not what addiction is. So yeah, bringing in all the people didn't fix the problem.
Yeah. So what did you do?
Well, so he was kind of, we rode this wave of sobriety, relapse. He was in AA, was actually working what I thought, maybe even he thought was a good program. He had a solid sponsor. I was out of town one weekend and all hell broke loose. He major relapsed, ended up involuntarily committed. He was home with our 2-year-old at the time, so DSS was involved, and that was his rock bottom. And so he was forced to make a decision, and thankfully he chose to go to rehab. And by the grace of God, to date, that was his last drink. Um, yeah, so
So how did you feel when you got that phone call? I mean, you're trusting your husband with he's the father, your 2-year-old, you went out of town, which we shouldn't stop living, right? We still continue to live and do what we need to do for ourselves. What was your reaction at that moment?
absolutely sick. Um, there, he was not completely unconscious when EMS got there, but there was a moment of, is he alive? So, of course, a great amount of fear. And then when I knew he was alive, then a great amount of anger. It just, I was 3 hours away. I couldn't get home quick enough. And yeah, just the shock and um, it was just like being hit with a cannonball to the stomach. Um, but also there was actually a great relief because it was like the floodgates had opened. It was out for everybody to know. There was no hiding anything, which by that point most people knew, but still it was just kind of like, hey, this is the time, let's get it all out. It was actually a bit freeing, to really just be head on facing the gravity of the problem.
That's real. I'm going to stop you. Like the freeing part, like we as loved ones all the time, like, we put up a mask around so many people. We carry so much load. We try to protect our loved one from the shame and from all of that, that, I remember with my husband, we would go to church, no one knew what was going on. Like, we would go in social media, I talk about that a lot, like, made us look like a beautiful family. But, what's in the dark will come to light, and how freeing that is. And so, it sounds crazy to the outside world probably, but, like, it really is, and it's not that you did it was to shame him or anything, but, like, now it was your opportunity for both of you to begin to heal.
Yes, absolutely.
And so he went off to treatment, is that what you said?
Yes, 17 days in treatment. Mhm.
And so what did you do while he was in treatment?
Uh, so Finding Hope was not even on my radar. They weren't even on this side of the country. So I went to Al-Anon, and I remember my first meeting sitting down, and I was so emotional I couldn't even speak, or I would just start crying. But the I felt at home. I actually only went to one meeting because I had a 2-year old. Yeah. But anyways, that one meeting was enough to make me realize that when you're surrounded by people that have walked in your shoes, like those people knew me, they knew what I was thinking, what I was feeling, and I literally did not say a word the entire hour. And I was so moved by that. Even though I didn't go back, I'll always be grateful for those people because it showed me what community and having a safe place to just talk about the darkest corners of your life to people that get it. There's no substitute for that.
That's so good. Find a community with people that get it, right? I
Yes.
mean, we talk about that, how
Yeah.
my best friend doesn't get it because she hasn't been in our shoes. You get it. You get it. You know what it's like to be a wife of an alcoholic.
Right.
I can easily talk to you about it, but my best friend doesn't understand. And so like it's almost freeing like, hey, I'm feeling this. Have you ever felt this way too? And just be able to support one another in that, and you know be that community for one another. So you went to the Al-Anon, you saw that how important this community was. And our Hope is Alive home, I think around this time was coming out that direction,
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken. We
Right.
brought our home out there all the way from the Midwest and
Yeah.
out to the coast. And so we knew that, we know Finding Hope needs to be in every community. So, especially when we have a house there. I mean, it needs to be
Mhm.
beyond where our homes are. And so we were ready to bring it. And so tell us, how did you start to get involved with Finding Hope and Hope is Alive?
Yeah. So a good friend of mine found out about Finding Hope. She works at the church. She's actually who I co-lead our group with. And she said, "Hey, there's this group called Finding Hope." Um, Her husband is in recovery as well. That's how we met. And she said, "You want to lead it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Okay, that's fine." And I just had no idea how it would grow. I thought we're a year into this sobriety thing. And I've arrived, and I've just grown so much through leading. So yeah, that's how I got involved in Finding Hope was um, through a friend who found out about it, and now we co-lead together.
Yeah, and you guys, I mean, your group is doing very well out there. When I was out there, you guys weren't meeting at that week, but we still were able to come together, and I got to meet some of the members, and
Mhm.
you could just. So, what have you learned by seeing members come in and being a part of Finding Hope in this community? I know you said that you've grown so much, and I think so many people think, oh, they're a year sober, I don't need to be here anymore. They're doing well, I don't need to be here, but really this is a continuing thing. It doesn't stop. Our recovery, our journey never stops, just like our loved ones. So what have you seen with your members, as they walk in, and then 6 months later, what have you noticed?
Yeah, so we got interrupted with COVID. So we've been consistently leading for a solid year now in person. And we've got several members that have been with us the whole time. And I have seen them walk in those doors, it like for the first time saying out loud, my husband or my son or whoever is an addict, to now they come, their loved one's been sober now. Now they come so that they can love on other people. And so to see that come full circle is incredible. And, just like you just said, there's so many parallels between our loved one in addiction and our recovery, and it doesn't stop. Like, we never arrive, we never stop learning, growing. Every time somebody new comes, they bring a new experience or a new situation, new point of view. And I think if we're going to continue to help people and love on people, we have to be open to continuing to learn and hear different perspectives and points of view. So yeah, I think the coolest thing is just seeing some people come, we'll say full circle, from where their loved one was in addiction to now in recovery. That they've been able to see the growth in themselves is incredible.
Yeah, and I love that you said they're able to say it for the first time that their maybe daughter, their son, their husband, their spouse, whoever it might be, that they have a problem. Because that's where that when we start that healing process is, yes, my family's not perfect. We have problems, and being able to say it in a safe room with people who understand, there's just so much healing that happens in that room,
Yes.
just by being verbal about it. And I love to hear that now they're able to love on those people that walk in the door, or maybe they know someone. So, I mean, when I was there, two late new ladies were there because of another member had invited them. It's like I found healing in this community. I come with me, come check it
Yes.
out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I know there's other spouses out there like you and I, and they get to hear from me all the time. So I'm glad I had you on here. And they can relate. Maybe it was the story of like being in college together, getting married, thinking, or maybe it's like is the roller coaster ride, sobriety, relapse, up and down. Um, so through that, one question I told you I might ask you is I get the question, how do I know if I need to leave or
Mm.
stay? And one thing I always tell people is I can't make that choice for you. You don't have to decide today. You don't have to decide tomorrow. Just continue to pray. So through your husband's ups and downs, the relapses, that night when you were 3 hours away, did you ever think about leaving or what made you stay? I know that's a tough question.
Yeah. It is, and I get asked that um, often. Um, and I think, and what I will tell our members, safety is always like top priority. So if there's a safety issue, like, yes, you need to make a physical exit. Um, and that's a little bit what it came down to for us. The day after in the hospital, like he had put himself at risk. He'd also put our daughter in harm's way, based on some of the actions that he did while he was under the influence. And so I gave him a choice, and I will never forget the moment because as I choked out the words, I knew that I said it's divorce or rehab. I cannot risk you putting our safety, in jeopardy like that again. And I knew as I choked out the words that because he was not in a good place, as you can imagine. I knew that if he chose not to go to rehab, that I would have to follow through with separation. And that was a really, really hard pill to swallow. And thankfully, he chose rehab. But yeah, I mean, God is so good and so gracious and is always in the business of restoration and redemption. That doesn't always look like a saved marriage or, you know, a reconciled relationship. But I just think that safety is always a, a number one priority. And I think that's kind of what it came down to for me, if that makes sense, answers your
Yeah,
question.
absolutely. And I agree 110. Like if you or your family or your kids are in danger, you have to leave. Like you have to call 911. You have to, like, you can't protect your husband anymore. You have to protect yourself and your kids. I mean, that's non-negotiable for me. So yes, absolutely. And you are right. Like, you set that boundary of, you're going to have to go to rehab or we're going to get a divorce separation. And, I think sometimes people use that as a threat sometimes,
Definitely.
but you have to make sure if you're going to, the words you speak, I think our listeners need to remember like the words you speak are powerful. And if you're not going to follow through with what you say, there's no boundary there.
Right.
They will know, oh, those were just words again.
Mhm.
I can manipulate. I can make my way back in. And so making sure we have some of those, firm boundaries in place, and making sure it's for us and for our protection. It sounds like that's what you were doing, like,
Yeah.
and not to manipulate the other person in a
Yeah.
so, what are
You
some things that you have learned through finding hope that you wish you would have known prior to all of this?
mm. I think realizing how sick I was would have been, having that realization, having that education, that knowledge of how sick I was would have, I don't know, it might have allowed him to hit rock bottom earlier. Who knows? I don't spend a lot of time saying what if, coulda, woulda, shoulda, but I've seen through experience and people's testimonies that when the family members get well, a lot of times that's when the addict makes turns a true corner. And so, yeah, I just wish I'd been more educated, more empowered. I mean, I was a codependent, still kind of am, enabling, anxious mess all the time for years. And yeah, so I wish that I had had the education, the community, and just the knowledge of my own recovery and my own contributions to the problem. I think that would have, yeah, would have made a big difference.
Okay, so you talked about, we know I was enabler, I was codependent. I'm doing better on that, I feel like sometimes.
Good.
Um, but I think sometimes when you said enabling, so many times people think enabling goes straight to giving money or
Mm,
giving a house or that. So as a spouse, what is one way you enabled your husband?
just one?
I mean, you can share more. I think that's good for people because
Yeah,
they don't always see it as enabling, I feel like
right.
sometimes.
Mhm.
But now like looking back on it, it's like, "Oh, that was enabling my husband."
Right.
So what would be one or two?
Protecting him from natural consequences. And I mean, I never gave him money. I never said, okay, well, my daughter and I, we're going to leave. So you could, I never did the typical enabling things, but I protected him from natural consequences. I lied for him.
Mm,
Um, I covered up. I
yeah.
think that was probably one of the biggest ways I enabled him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was like my husband's secretary. I would check his work phone, make sure everything was getting done. Like,
Mhm.
because I thought I was protecting our family because if he didn't work, he
Right.
didn't get money. But you are right. Like I was natural consequences. If you're not doing your work, you're going to lose your job, which
Right.
may have. But again, we can't go back on the what ifs. We can only look for today, and what can I do today? I
Yeah.
can't go back, but what can I change today that maybe yesterday wasn't my best day? You
Mhm.
know. So if there's another spouse sitting here with you today, maybe in the midst of it, in the middle of the storm, they just don't know what to do. They're just broken. They might have a family, they might not. What would your biggest advice or what would you tell them today?
I would tell you that you're not alone, that it's not your fault, and there is hope, which happens to be the Finding Hope motto. And it's a really good one because you just need to know it's not your fault and that you're not alone. And I tell our members often, even if your loved one never enters recovery, you can still live a full and happy life because of the hope that Jesus gives us. Like,
Wow.
there's no hope outside of him. Of course, our prayer is always that our loved one will enter recovery, but if they don't, how are you going to live your life? Um, so I would encourage that spouse to get help. Tell a friend, tell a coworker, a family member, love yourself and trust Jesus for your strength because you can't do it alone.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. Our hope is in Jesus, but
Yeah.
let's cling to him, you know, first and foremost. So, anything else you want to share with our listeners today?
I don't think so. Find a Finding Hope group.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're not, here's another plug. If there's not a Finding Hope group in your community, don't forget to reach out to me. Let's get one started. You don't have to know all the answers. And, we use the word leader, but really it should be more of a facilitator role
Absolutely.
in
Yeah.
that. And I'm here with you 100% of the way, helping you, supporting you through all of that as you lead. So, Maggie, I like to leave our listeners with a challenge. And so, as you and I were talking through, I wrote down a couple things I thought would be a good challenge. And one thing is, you said something about recovery never stops. And
Mm,
so, I would encourage people maybe your loved one is doing well. Maybe your loved one's doing well, like Maggie's husband and my husband, and you don't think you need Finding Hope anymore or need that support. But I would encourage you, get plugged back in. If it's not for that new person that walks in that door, sometimes it takes me right back when I talk to people, and just so grateful for my recovery program for that. And that what I learn something new every time. It's not just about how I relate to my husband, but it's about life too. So I challenge you to get plugged back into Finding Hope. And if Finding Hope isn't for you, maybe another recovery, but find your recovery group.
yeah.
And also to challenge you, don't let the enemy tell you that you are alone in this,
Mm,
because you are not alone. And reach out, like she was saying, reach out. Don't be scared. I remember the first time I picked up my phone to call, and I had to use those words that Maggie was saying earlier with some of her members saying, my husband's an alcoholic, or maybe he might be an alcoholic. Maybe you don't know, but
mm.
you are struggling in something. Reach out. Don't go through this alone anymore. Find your community, find your people. Reach out to me, Amy at hopeisalive.net. I want to be there to support you in all of this. So thank you guys so much for joining us this week. And you can learn more about Finding Hope at FindingHope.Today. But before you go, be sure to give us a 5-star review, share this on social media, and subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss our next hope-filled episode. Thanks again for joining me, Amy LaRue, and our special guest, Miss Maggie, all the way from North Carolina, in this episode of Finding Hope. And remember, you are not alone. It's not your fault. And there is hope.